the Eisendrache, a stunning castle in the middle of the Alps, full of mystery and adventure. But the real question is, how safe will we be during this adventure? That is exactly what we need to find out on today's episode. Welcome to the Safety Check. Okay, we have made it to the stunning the Eisendrache. Let's just take a minute to admire the view while we're here before we tear this place to pieces. Alright, that's enough. Let's get to the business end of this video. And of course, as always, we've got to go through the low tier risks first. And the first one for the video is going to be hygiene. So it doesn't take long for us to start finding blood all over the place in this map. Shed ton of footprints and puddles in the first couple rooms that we enter. And this just keeps getting worse the more you go along the map. You can see the blood seeping through all of the rooms, which obviously isn't going to be good for us. Alongside all of the corpses that are on this map, just laying here. At least this one has some nice flowers. But this doesn't get any better the further we go in. They're starting to stain the rugs with the blood that's around here. And it just gets worse and worse the further along we go. And this guy, poor fella, lost his leg somewhere along the way. So yeah, hygiene isn't great. And I think this proves it. The little snow angels that people have been making here with blood. So yeah, hygiene is going to get a 60 out of 100. Next up on the low tier risks, which also in my opinion isn't a low tier risk for this map, but it is the weather. Now we did speak about this on the Giant. We said that the snow is obviously going to cause massive issues, you know, getting cold, freezing us, and potentially causing many more issues. But I would say the snow is actually worse off on this map. There is 2 times more here than what is on the Giant. I mean, the snow is literally everywhere, man. We are on the top of the Alps, like I said a minute ago, so it's going to be an issue. For that reason, it is going to get a 50 out of 100. Next up on the list, we are going with tripping hazards. And as we can see in the courtyard alone, there's plenty of little tripping hazards around, like the rubble here, or these barrels that are hidden by the snow, or the pallets that are here. And that's just in the courtyard. You go inside, you have issues like all the cables laying around on the floor. God knows how many times I've just been wandering around and tripped over cables. Way too many. And the cables are everywhere on this map. They go through every room pretty much. And where there's not, there's obviously debris like these wooden planks, rocks, parts of broken chair, you name it. It is everywhere. So yeah, tripping hazards is definitely going to be an issue, and it is going to get a 60 out of 100. The next one I want to talk about is equipment on the map. Now, when I'm talking equipment, I'm talking about all of these computer system monitors, whatever all of this is. I don't know what they could possibly be doing with all of this stuff, but it's all electronics which could be harmful. On top of that as well, you got things like cannons, or anti-aircraft cannons, should I say, which we can classify as equipment. And of course, other things like this axe that is just in one of the zombies' heads. Yeah. So yeah, there's definitely equipment that could be used on this map, and that could cause us an issue. And for that reason, it's going to get a 70 out of 100. Moving on from that, I want to talk about the low tier burns on the map. Now, if you guys watched the Shadows of Evil safety check, I mentioned that all these types of candles could be a potential low tier burn risk. You know, these start falling off, catching the boxes alight, all of a sudden you've got a big fire. And of course, you could put your hand over them, which could burn them. Now, I wouldn't do that personally, but I guarantee someone would. And then we do have little fires like this on the floor, which could also be classified as low tier burns. So yeah, it is going to get a 70 out of 100. Now we do have one more low tier risk I want to talk about, and that is shrapnel, a classic as always. Now, a lot of these windows have been broken in, and there's left a lot of glass on the floor. And on top of that, there's all this glass and bullet cases by the looks of it that are also on the floor, which could be classified as shrapnel if you wanted to. And this is everywhere. Like, it's definitely going to be an issue for us. So yeah, shrapnel is going to get a 70 out of 100. But now that we've mentioned that, we can move on to our next category, which is the medium tier. And we're going to be talking about electricity, which always just seems to be behind a small fence, and that is it. But what about these ones that are just out in the open here? I could easily touch any of these and get burnt to a crisp. And that's without mentioning this death ray trap, of course, which could be an issue on its own because it sets the whole floor a light, basically. So yeah, electricity is definitely a big issue on this map, and it is going to get a 35 out of 100. The next medium tier risk I want to talk about on this map relates to falling. There are a few spots where you could definitely fall off and hurt yourself. Some are not so bad as others. For example, falling off here. It could hurt, but it's not going to be the end of the world. But one of the main areas I spotted was actually in this tower here. Now, you can go up a certain amount of stairs, but once you get to about here, the stairs are broken. And if you fall down that, that's definitely going to hurt. So yeah, falling is definitely going to be a risk, and it is going to get a 40 out of 100. Next up, we have high tier burns. Now, these high grade burns, unlike the little one I mentioned here, relate more to the one here, you know, where it's got half of the building on fire. It also relates to all of these dumpster fires that we've got here in the barrels that are just light and very easily accessible, which could cause some very, very bad burns on you. Bearing that in mind, it has got to be jotted down as a risk, and it is going to get a 40 out of 100. The next medium tier risk that I want to talk about is the machinery on the map. Now, when I was looking around, the kind of machinery I was thinking about was this kind of thing. Like, I believe this powers the tram. I'm not really sure. I'm assuming it does because it's all connected. But look how close this is to my head. I mean, I can literally jump and I can headbutt this. So imagine if this is moving when I'm calling up the tram. If I jumped, I would get caught in this. My head would be gone. Or what if I had some lovely, luxurious long hair and it got caught in the wind and then it got caught in this and then I was being thrown around like a yo-yo? Yeah, not ideal. So that is obviously going to be an issue. And with that in mind, it is going to get a 60 out of 100. Next up on the list, though, we have chemical hazards. Now, in one of the bedrooms that we walk through, we can actually see a lot of chemicals being used. As you can see, look, this is basically a chemistry room at this point, not a bedroom. And there is an abundance of different vials and scales and God knows what else around here that they were probably making. And there is more of this when we come into this little chamber here as well. As you can see, there's a lot going on here. They were doing something. Let's be honest, we can't deny that. So yeah, chemical hazards is definitely going to be an issue, and it is going to get a 50 out of 100. Now, the next one I want to talk about is the building stability. As you can see, there's some holes in part of the building structure that could cause some issues, like that hole in the roof there. And then, like we mentioned earlier, the stairs in that room are completely gone, which isn't good. There's holes in the walls like this one. And I mean, look at the state of this one. There is no wall whatsoever here, and half the roof is missing. I'm expecting this part will fall down quite soon. And of course, like we mentioned earlier, these rooms aren't great. I mean, there's a big hole in the wall here. Half of the roof is missing here, which has obviously caused some issues because it's all collapsed on us. And some more walls missing. Nothing out the ordinary, you know? So yeah, building stability is definitely an issue, and it is going to get a 40 out of 100. We do have one final medium tier risk we also need to talk about before we go on to the high tier risks, and that is the vehicles. There's a few motorbikes around and some armored trucks laying about that have been crashed, you know, into walls. And as you can see, a lot of steam is blowing out of them, which could lead to an explosion of some sort, which would be dangerous. Let's just say I don't trust the vehicles that are on the map. They just look like they're ready to cause some harm. And for that reason, they are going to get a 60 out of 100. And the only reason they're not getting lower is because there's not too many of them this time, which is good. But they still have to be classed as a risk. Moving on from that, we can now go on to our high tier risks. And the first one I want to talk about is explosions. Now, obviously, chemicals could all lead to some explosive risks, especially when you've got canisters like this attached on top. They don't look very safely secured either, you know. They could definitely explode. And we see this trend in a lot of places on the map. For example, there are canisters just laying around on the floor down here. They could have fallen off the top for all I know. And there's more canisters around, just out in the open, easily accessible. I could shoot those right now. They'd probably blow up in my face. There's just too many around, like on the floor, not looked after. That could definitely cause an issue. For that reason, explosions is going to get a 10 out of 100. Now, the second high tier risk I want to talk about is the potential to be crushed. As we've mentioned, there's starting to become issues with the roofs, which is causing things to fall down, like these pillars of wood here. And probably the more noticeable one would be the one we mentioned here, where half of the ceiling has collapsed and actually blocked the pathway. And let's be honest, this guy found out. Like, he got stuck in all of this. What's the chances that we get stuck in something like that when the rest of the buildings collapse in? I don't want to be there when that happens. So I do have to mark it down as a risk, and it is going to get a 20 out of 100. Now, originally, I thought that was the only 2 high tier risks for this map. But then I noticed this guy chilling out on this pillar here. Now, what's happened to him? He has been impaled by that debris, obviously leading to his downfall. So I thought, okay, maybe there is some chance of being impaled on this map. And then I noticed all of these fences have sharp edges to the top of them, or spikes, shall I say, which you could get impaled on. And then on top of that, how did I not notice this before? But of course we have the gates, which have sharp edges on the bottom of them. If that falls on you, you are definitely dying. And I think the best example would be this one. This one hasn't even made it the whole way up. I'm probably at risk right now, just standing here. And if I'm not wrong, I believe that is blood on the end of these, which means someone has already been impaled by these things. So that is definitely a big issue, and it is going to get a 20 out of 100. But now that we have identified the high tier risk, we can move on to the miscellaneous. And the first one I want to talk about is something we've seen before, but in a different form. Yes, it's the dragon heads. Now, we did mention these as a risk on Mob of the Dead previously, because once activated, they come to life. And not only do they breathe fire, they are out for blood. They want to eat any type of corpse or flesh that they can. And funny enough, I don't trust the way he's looking at me, especially when he's trying to set me alight like that. So yeah, these are definitely going to be an issue. And for that reason, the dragon statues are going to get a 40 out of 100. Now, the next risk that I want to talk about in the miscellaneous tier, I'm actually going to have to get this teleporter to go across to, which is a risk on its own, which we will surely mention in a bit. But it is the rocket. Now, we saw how this affects the area at the beginning when we load in, covering everything in flames. I mean, of course it's going to. It's got to get to space. And the fact that you could potentially get stuck here while it's going off, you're going to get instantly incinerated. And for that reason, it is going to have to get a 30 out of 100. Now, since the teleporter currently isn't working, let's use our next miscellaneous tier, which is the Wundersphere. Now, when I activate this thing, it throws me miles into the sky. How do I survive that? I do not know, because I am catapulted miles into the sky. Well, that's what it feels like anyway. Luckily, that only activates if you activate it. So you don't have to worry about just walking over it and getting thrown, which is a good thing. But it is still a risk, because what if it doesn't throw you onto the pad and you get absolutely obliterated when you land on the floor? There's a chance of that happening. So yeah, the Wundersphere is going to get a 40 out of 100. Next up on the list, we are going to have to talk about the weaponry on the map. Now, obviously, you come into this room and you can see guns just laying on the side, unattended to. Not great, but you know, I can pass it, you know, because you know most people are dead here. And then there are also things like all the swords and spears that are just out in the open, which is starting to get a bit worse because, you know, this guy's got absolutely skewered by them. And this carries on into this room as well, where you can see all the swords on the walls, on the side here, all the axes and spears on the side there. It's starting to get worse. But then it takes another step when we enter the ammo storage. Look at all of these shells that are just open to the elements. I mean, there's literally a warning sign here saying Vorshich explosive, which I imagine is like beware of explosive or something like that. And I can see why, because they are everywhere. So the weaponry is definitely an issue, and it is going to have to get a 30 out of 100. Now, I want to talk about this room in particular for our next miscellaneous tier risk, because this is a funky little one to have as a risk, which we don't get to see every day. But once I stand on all of these panels, like I imagine everybody knows who's played this map, a certain something happens to this room. And that will be that the gravity completely alters to the point where I can jump and start wall running. Again, like I'm playing Prince of Persia. I'm just flying around the room, which might seem fun, but is definitely a massive risk because it could deactivate and I could fall to my death. So bearing that in mind, I do have to give it a 30 out of 100. Now going back to this room, of course, we have the teleporter, which takes us to the rocket ship area. Now, we've spoken about these before. I don't trust them. You know my reasonings. What if I get stuck in the void? What if something goes wrong? What if I never return? Luckily, there's only 2 teleporter locations on this map. So for that reason, it is going to get a 50 out of 100. Okay, we are on to our final risk, and this is going to relate to the element 115 around the map. Now, there's a fair bit of this on this map, like these little rocks here. Or on a bigger scale, the whole bridge here, which, as you can see, has clearly spoiled onto everything and is even starting to make really loud, suspicious noises, which I don't want to be involved in because I don't want to end up going Delulu. And as we all know, element 115 is not good for the human condition and causes various issues. For that reason, if it is on this map, it has to get a 20 out of 100. Now, with all the risks said and done for this map, we have to look at the safety features of the map. And the first one is the railings again. They are actually doing a pretty decent job in the majority of this place. But we do have some issues like on the stairs here, for example, and of course the falling issues where there's no more railings or stairs left. But overall, it's not terrible. So it is going to get a 2.5 added onto it. Now, the second one I want to talk about are the safety signs. Now, there are a couple of these safety signs around. Not loads, but enough to warrant it getting points. For example, there is a nice electricity sign right here and right here, warning me that I could get electrocuted. And of course, we mentioned this one earlier when we were talking about the explosives, but there is a warning sign here as well to caution us. So there's a couple around, and for that reason, it's going to get a +1. Now, with that said and done, let's just do a quick recap on all of the risks that we have found. And boy, oh boy, it's a big list today. So to start with, we have hygiene with a rating of 60, weather elements with a rating of 50, tripping hazards with a rating of 60, equipment with a rating of 70, low-tip burns with a rating of 70, shrapnel with a rating of 70, electrocution with a rating of 35, falling with a rating of 40, high-grade burns with a rating of 40, machinery with a rating of 60, chemical hazards with a rating of 50, building stability with a rating of 40, vehicles with a rating of 60, explosions with a rating of 10, being crushed with a rating of 20, being impaled with a rating of 20, the dragon statues with a rating of 40, rocket with a rating of 30, the wonder spheres with a rating of 40, weaponry around the map with a rating of 30, the gravity room with a rating of 30, element 115 with a rating of 20, and the teleports with a rating of 50. Oh yes, I can breathe. That is a lot of risks on one map, and it has to be arguably the highest amount of risk we have ever seen on a map. So when we combine all of these together, we actually get a grand total score of 43.5 out of 100, which isn't actually that bad considering. But we do have to take into consideration that there are over 10 risks on this map. And a matter of fact, there are over 20 risks on this map, which does give it a -10, -5 for each 10 risks it gets. And on top of that, it has over 5 high tier risks on this map, which gives it another -5. But of course, we do have the safety features of the map with a +1 for safety signs and a +2.5 for railings. So when we add all of these together, Der Eisendrache gets an overall score of 32 out of 100. Compared to the other Black Ops maps, this isn't great, but when you have that many risks, can you be surprised? But in terms of what that does to the tier list, Der Eisendrache actually ends up in the shut it down category, and it actually ends up between Nuketown and Citadel de Mort. Nuketown having the exact same score as Der Eisendrache. And actually, you know what? Considering it has so many more, we're actually going to put it below Nuketown. So it's going to sit in between Mob of the Dead and Nuketown. It's in pretty decent company. But that is the end for today's video. Now, of course, next up on the list, we have Zetsubo no Shima. I cannot imagine that map being safe, but only time will tell. Now, before I go, I do have to say a massive thank you to the members of this channel. The extra support is greatly appreciated. And if you want to show some extra support and love, then why not also become a member? That would be amazing. Apart from that, leave a like on the video and subscribe for more if you have enjoyed the content. And I shall see you all in the next video. But until then, stay safe.